Good afternoon, Suburban readers and viewers. Welcome to our first edition of Beyond the Pages for 2021. And I hope wish all of you a healthy year and certainly a less eventful year in the bad way that 2020 was. But it's a very serious topic that brings us together today. 6 weeks ago, we broke a story on a protocol that the Ministry of Health of Quebec wanted to enact, wanted to use as a guide, which would, for the first time in any Western jurisdiction in a non-war setting, would limit healthcare. Many of them are odious elements of that report. We have now learned, literally within the past 24 hours, may soon be translated into law by ministerial decree of the Minister of Justice at the request of the Premier and the Health Minister. And with me to discuss this is perhaps one of the greatest voices of conscience in medicine and humanity that we have in Montreal, Dr. Paul SABA. He's a senior doctor at La Chine General, but more than that, the Physicians for Social Justice, a voice for some of the most vulnerable in our healthcare system, and the author of a remarkable book called Made to Live, which really should be the motto of our healthcare system, but not enough people really have that in their hearts and minds, and they should. Paul, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Beryl, so much, and thank you for always taking a stand for humanity and for healthcare.
Well, you're just trying to keep up with you. But you referenced, now, Paul wrote an article on this possibility, on this guideline when it came out, and it was enormously effective and touched many people. And I'll refer to it through our discussion. But I just want to go over a few salient points. And Paul, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but memory serves me. So what this guideline, which was put out under the name of the Assistant Deputy Health Minister, calls for, is that when ICUs and ERs, particularly ICUs, reach 150 to 200% capacity, that people will be not allowed to get health care, and people in ERs and ICUs may be transferred out, not just into another area of the hospital, but out, if there isn't a 70% possibility or probability that they will recover. It's very draconian. This has never happened before. And who decides whether you live or die? And really, we should call this half hour, who decides whether you live or die? A committee of three, very reminiscent of Soviet Stalinist committees. They were called troikas. A bureaucrat from the health ministry, a doctor from that hospital, and a member of the community that hospital serves. They will decide, literally, in the words of Dr. Francois Marquise, who heads up ICU and ER at Maison of Rosemont, whether we pull an air tube out. As he said, we're not trained for that. And of course, the government's excuse, again, is not that the beds are being overrun or there's not equipment, that they don't have enough nursing staff and orderlies. Now, we can get into whose fault that is, but on the face of it, Paul, if this comes to pass, what do you think should be the appropriate response of the medical community?
I think the medical community should absolutely refuse to participate. First of all, I think it's completely unethical. It goes against medical ethics. We're trained to care for people, not to not care for people. And the whole approach of the government has been, as you know, my stance on various topics, including assisted suicide, is that we need to care for everybody and give the best possible care, even to the end of life. Now, in this, some people have said in the past, well, that will never affect me. I'll never consent to medical aid in dying. I'll keep that topic aside, but it is really a continuum of the degradation in terms of our values for human life, because this will affect you whether you consent or not. Make it very clear, you will have no say. Your doctor will not have any say. Your family will not have any say. So if you get COVID, and you could be relatively healthy and working and functional, but you've got diabetes, you've got high blood pressure, maybe you have some disability, any of these things will give you a lower score. If you're older, you'll get a lower score because they say we won't discriminate against age, but we know as you get older, you're more likely to have chronic conditions. And seniors, particularly, they have what they call a fragility index. I mean, your risk of falling, your risk of being of not being able to care for yourself. All those will give you a negative score. So if you can't get a score of 70%, we're not talking about trying to get into university. We're talking about life and death. You will be refused. In fact, if you're on a ventilator for let's say more than 21 days, you will also be taken off, even without your say. If you're a younger person, you know, because now they're saying it doesn't matter if once you make it in, if you're in there too long, we're gonna kick you out. And I have personal stories in my book that you thank you for mentioning. Made to Live. I talk about my father-in-law who was in his 70s, who was on the ventilator more than 21 days, and he's totally functional. He had cancer. This was over 10 years ago, and he teaches my kids Italian gardening, how to make pizzas. I have a story of a 40-year-old woman who is alive and well. A number of years ago, was told at a community hospital, there's no quality of life if we keep you on more than 21 days. And she's functional and alive and well. She's in her 40s. So all these things will
and I
come
think
to
many
bear.
people who are listening have these stories. We know that, as Mark Twain once wrote, nobody lives on the averages. We're all about statistics. And as the great Dr. Oliver Sacks once wrote, the problem in medicine today is we're so quantitative. We need more qualitative. We need the human being looked at, because I think most viewers, most readers will know somebody in their families or their immediate circles who did not live on the average, who was a medical miracle, as you just described. Except those miracles are about the human being.
And we're not talking about a score of 50% getting in or out. We're talking have to have 70%. I mean,
how does one even quantify 70%?
Yeah, I mean that's and
it's like a made to fail directive.
That's right. And the sad thing, Beryl, is that this completely goes against the medical model. The medical model was based on the Good Samaritan people. Well, our ideas are antiquated. We're here today. We have to be. We need useful, functioning members of society, because that's really what we're talking about. We want people who, if they survive, that they can go back and work and make money for pay taxes. But that's not the whole idea of what medical care is. Medical care is provide care for people who need care, whether they end up back on their feet, because nobody knows how people are going to come out of something like COVID, because we even have stories of long-term sequelae, complications. Nobody knows, young or old. We know that if you're younger, you have a better chance of survival. Well, if you're older, you have less of a chance of survival. These are the people we should be caring for and give them a chance to get back. Even if they're not going to go back and work 30, 40 years, maybe they'll put in 10 years. Maybe they'll make a significant contribution for cancer research, because some of our older citizens are very generous to society. So we don't look at value of human life.
And more than the fact that we don't just look at profit.
That's right.
Our whole emphasis in progress in society has been on the value of the human being. As Bobby Kennedy once cautioned against, we will come to the point where we know the price of everything and the value of nothing. We know we're living longer, thanks to big pharma, thanks to better living. I don't know. We know we're not only living longer, we're living better longer. Today's 80-year-old is like yesterday's 70-year-old. How many people do we know in their 70s that are running corporations, that are still at work? And so the whole emphasis here, the reason why 43 cents of every tax dollar is put into health, is that the value is not plus-value like an accountant. The value is the extension of the quality and quantity of life. And here we see for the first time a government saying, no, we can't handle it. And you made a very important point, and I would recommend to all our viewers to just Google Paul's op-ed called New ICU Directives Discriminate Against Those Most Needing Care. And you said the government is reacting at that time to what they saw happening perhaps in Milan, but that was an outlier. And you wrote, we're not in that situation here. Indeed, we have what, 5,400 beds free right now in the island of Montreal? 5,400 or 6,400?
We can make of lots of different scenarios and different ways of dealing with this. And what they've done is, yes, beds are filling up. I know that the MUHC, for example, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the MUHC. This is an article that appeared today's newspaper. They're filled up in their ICU. But what we need to do is find other ICU beds, create ICU beds, bring in people who are semi-retired or retired, because the government has always been cutting back and saying, oh, we don't have enough positions on the island. So you can only have so many doctors, you can only have so many nurses. So everything has been restricted. And now we're really reaping all these cost cutting. So we need to reinvest and immediately and bring back doctors, bring in retired nurses or semi-retired nurses, call in the military. We don't need to be going off.
We did that with the seniors' residences. They didn't have enough staff. They brought in 900.
Yes, we should bring in doctors and nurses from the military, wherever they are. Some people say, well, some of them are already working, so we'd have to, but some of them are full-time doctors in the military. Bring them, create military units, MASH units. We can do that. We have, for example...
But the government claims the reason for this report is that they're short of nurses and orderlies. And that's exactly the 1,000 people that they brought into the seniors' homes. They're soldiers. They're not surgeons.
That's right.
Nurses and orderlies. It's not
you can train in several weeks, and they did it, intensive care, intensive training, people to provide basic care, fluids for those who are less sick. So we don't need our nurses working on floors for people who are less sick. All they need they need just as basic supportive care. We can, and those that they've trained, bring them in. Let's pour in money, because we're going to spend billions and billions of dollars in other ways that have less beneficial outcome. What better investment than in human life? And the other thing people aren't aware, they even have a separate protocol for children. So pediatric kids are also going to be treated in the same way based on their success. And anyone who has an opportunity to go to the website, my website, madeToLive.com, will see the story of our daughter, Jessica, who was told she wouldn't, even if she survived, she wouldn't have any quality of life. And you can see now she was the one to help set up my Zoom conference with you, because I'm not the greatest in technology. They're going to be faced with the same thing. And you will not have even any decisional power, because they have a separate pediatric protocol, of what happens to your child. So this is totally, completely unacceptable. We need to build capacity. Even if we have to find states in the US where we need to fly people off to, or other parts of Canada where there's less of a surcapacity, get the Canadian military to fly them. They have helicopters. Let's bring our military back home. I don't know all the different countries we're involved in, but this is a medical emergency. We need to put all our resources at our disposal, and not be saying, oh, we're going to go to plan B. Plan B basically is to limit care, restrict care. That's totally unacceptable.
What strikes me is the following. Yeah. And you'll correct any of these figures, but I've rechecked them. By the way, the MUC has still 6 beds open in the ICU. Mm-hmm. Jewish General, they're getting more cases, but not under not to a suffocating degree. Neither the Montreal General. Now, we have 5,400 beds free in Montreal Island. There are 228 hospitals in Quebec, and only 1,537 hospitalized people. What they're not reporting is that the average hospital stay is now 48 to 72 hours. In fact, I just had 2 people who took their 86-year-old and 78-year-old mothers into emergency, COVID positive, a few mild symptoms. They were given whatever they were given, and they were literally let out the next day. Now, given that reality, and the reality that the differential between the positive test today and how many are even symptomatic, but let's stick with hospitalizations, is 90% less than it was in the spring. What do you think is motivating the government to go to such extreme measures today?
I think they're acting out of fear, and I understand that you want to have a plan B, but your plan B shouldn't be to restrict access. Your plan B.
Sorry, you said plan B. When you're deciding to terminate life and to kill people, that seems like plan zero.
Exactly. I agree with you, Barry.
I got nothing left.
That should not be on our plan. It's unethical. You know, we can't rely on the system to fix itself. That's why we're on this Zoom conference, Beryl. We have to really motivate, and we have to mobilize the community to say no. Doctors
and doctors are beginning to
often prevented from speaking.
And doctors are starting.
Yeah, but
I mentioned doctors.
And I speak, by the way.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm just having trouble with the, what I wanted to say, Beryl, is physicians are often under pressure from administrators not to come out and speak publicly because they're working in the hospitals. Not that they're paid by the hospitals, they're paid through the Medicare program. They're often afraid that the government, you know, I mean, every time I go and speak publicly, there's always a concern that there'll be some type of investigation, or Dr. Saba, what you're saying is it medically sound. What I'm saying is very medically sound. I have the support of the World Medical Association in terms of their directives is never restrict care. And they have 10 million physicians in over 100 countries.
Which is how many millions of doctors around the world?
Well, so 10 million. Yeah, so 10 million physicians say do not restrict access to care. Every patient should have access to the ICU. That they went in on a statement recently to that effect, and build ICU capacity. We have the means, we have the resources in terms of financial. If you pay people enough money, they will be out there. They'll man the they'll man the hospitals. And even if you just have to pay them their regular salaries to do so.
Something I've asked.
I think that's the way to go.
This is what I've been asking some of the public officials in Quebec City, because they always blame it on personnel. It's not a matter of physical capacity or equipment. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough. How much are you short? We're short 900 in the Montreal and Laval area. Well, if you're short 900, as you said, call in the army like you did with the. Oh, Paul, I think we've lost you. Your connection is off.
No, I'm back again. I'm back again. No, here I am.
So
I'm back again.
I mentioned to them, look, you said the same things with the seniors' residences. You brought in 1,000 soldiers, and not only that, you tripled the salaries of the orderlies within a month, and within 2 weeks after that, you were at full capacity. So why not do the same thing? Call in the army, and meanwhile, finish your 14-month-long negotiation with the Nurses Federation, so that we don't have what I've been told by highly placed sources are hundreds of nurses every day in the Montreal and Laval area are being told by their union reps to stay home, to pressure the government after 14 months. Why haven't we finished a contract with nurses if they're so vital? Why are we going straight to termination of patient's life? It's an abominable, it's not a Hobson's choice. It's an abominable decision. So, and I'm not getting an answer to that. It's a mind-boggling situation. And I think doctors, your voice was first, but we heard other doctors. We've been hearing Francois Marquis today. Dr. Peter Goldberg, the head of critical care at the MUC, said this is the twilight zone. And I wonder if there's ever going to come very shortly a critical mass of physicians. I could just see an ad in a newspaper with a one-paragraph statement of policy, of passion, of meaning, of support for life, and a demand that the government get it right, which it can do, and signed with hundreds of names of physicians. I don't think the government can ignore that.
Yeah, but regardless whether there's one physician or hundreds or thousands of physicians, Beryl, it goes against medical ethics. It goes against our whole approach to medicine. Modern medicine is actually based on, as I said, the Good Samaritan model. There's a story. It's a model that's used throughout the world. A story of where Jesus describes a story in the Gospel of Luke. You know, because a lawyer asks him, of course, it's always the lawyers asking questions. He says, how do we get to heaven? And God says, well, you have to obey God's commandments. He says, I've done all that. What else? And then he gives the story of Good Samaritan, a person left half dead on the side of the road. And the person who's left on the half side of the road is really your neighbor. And that's what Jesus says, you have to take care of your neighbor. And the guy was left half dead, and the Good Samaritan, who is part of a Jewish religious group, back then it still exists as a very small group today in Israel. And I'm not Jewish, by the way, but I find this the Judeo-Christian model, which is what modern medicine is based, is really the model, is care for your neighbor. And the person was left half dead. The guy took care of him, took him to the inn, provided the finances for the care of the person, did first aid with wine and olive oil. But we never know what the outcome of what happened to this person left half dead on the side of the road. That doesn't matter. He took care of them. And that should be our model. We take care of everybody. We don't have to have guaranteed outcomes, because if we have guaranteed outcomes, we wouldn't take care of anybody.
And imagine, this isn't even a guideline anymore. It's not even the premier taking this in front of the National Assembly and letting the representatives of the people debate it. This is an order from the premier to the Minister of Justice, which many lawyers think is unconstitutional to begin with. But it's the cold-bloodedness of it all, that we're telling you people are going to die. And they're going to die because of our choice. We've decreed that X number of people will die. It's one of the most unconscionable things I've heard in a lifetime in public affairs. And I'm hoping that I wrote some letters to members of the cabinet this morning, and we've had you on, and we've printed you and published you. There are other voices beginning, and I'm just hoping, knowing politicians, that when enough people grasp the situation, they'll sometimes backtrack from it. But I'm also hoping we get people in the medical community to say, hey, we're under pressure. It's tough. But can you imagine if 9/11 happened in Montreal? What does that mean? We're going to let all the people who were injured in a 9/11 type attack die because suddenly we have no capacity? It's an amazing situation.
Yeah.
Paul SABA.
And we have time, bro. We have time. So let's build the capacity. Let's build the capacity. Let's not go to these measures, these extreme measures, which are totally unacceptable, unconscionable, and against medicine. We have the capacity. Let's build more capacity, and let's continue to build capacity. Let's not go the easy way, which is a disastrous route. It's just going to be pushing people off the cliff.
That's a good message to end this with, and it's the most important message to send to Quebec City. Paul SABA, you're my friend. I love you. Thank you for coming on with us. Viewers, remember Dr. Paul SABA, Made to Live. This is the time to read this and to send one to every member of the National Assembly. Paul, thank you very much. Keep well. The best to you and yours. And viewers, thank you for tuning in on Beyond the Pages. See you next time. Take care, Paul.
Thank you so much.